We're going to do things a little different today. I've got sort of a list of general questions that I'm going to shoot towards Jen, and then she'll answer those. We'll sort of flesh that out and try to work through a program like that. And then at the end, after we finish, if you got individual questions you want to ask, we can do those in the group setting, or you can grab us afterwards and get Jen's contact info and get a hold of her that way. So a little bit different way of doing things. Heartwood was introduced to Dowda Senior Consulting probably, 3-4 years ago maybe, something like that. And we've had really good success sending clients to them who are interested in learning about senior living options in Richmond, and finding out the opportunities and the concerns around that. So without any further ado, Jen, why don't you come on up and we'll get started. And again, thank you all for being here. All right. All right, so first question. Can you give everybody just kind of a brief overview of what Dowda Consulting is all about and how you guys help clients work through this process, and maybe a little bit about how you kind of got into it too.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having us. We are really excited to be here. This is what I love to do more than, I was saying earlier, more than anything, except the one thing I do love to do even more would be to sit down with like just a couple or just one person, because I want to hear all about your story. But we love being able to just bring education and knowledge. We find that it really helps bring down anxiety. When the more you know, the less you have to be anxious. So really appreciate this opportunity to be here. I worked for, you all might have heard of like A Place for Mom or some of these other franchises that help place people into senior living. I worked for somebody for about 6 years, kind of just touring and helping support, and kept asking him, well, what if somebody doesn't want to move to assisted living? Or what if they just need help staying home? Or what if they need all this? And he kept saying, that's not what we do. So finally I said, well, I think that's what I would like to do. So 5.5 years ago, I just thought, well, I'll just go help a few people with whatever it is that they need. I was also teaching tennis. My husband and I run an organization for kids, middle and high school folks with special needs. And I just thought I'm just going to help a couple of people. That was my goal. And then we started helping people. And now we have, I think, 19 people on our team at this point, and are continuing to grow. So we found there was a chord out there that we struck. And so truly I went from I'm just going to help a couple of people to we're going to change Richmond, Virginia. I'm kind of a big vision kind of person. I was like, we can do it. We can make Richmond a place where it feels great to age and to know what you need, and everybody knows that our healthcare system is a challenge, and so how can we help support? What can we do? And so truly that's our goal, is to help as many people as we possibly can navigate this. We are a for-profit business, but we operate like a nonprofit because our goal is to help as many people as we can. Thankfully, we have an income source, which if we do move someone into a community, they pay us a referral fee. We use those referral fees as kind of the gasoline to drive the truck, and so we're able to keep going, and I can pay those 19 people to do what they do so amazingly, and we don't have to raise any support, and I don't have to have a board, because that's what you have to have for a nonprofit, and I didn't want to give up any control. So we truly are here to help. Most people come to us through word of mouth, so they know they can, hopefully they already know that they can trust us, and that's probably the most important thing to us, is building that relationship and people knowing you can trust us, and we want to help you. And everybody's situation is unique, right? And we want to know what your particular goals are. So I always get a little, and I told this to Wes when we were chatting, I get a little nervous whenever I'm asked to like say things in general, because then I don't want somebody who that actually doesn't apply to them to think, oh, well, Jen said we should do this. So please, please, please follow up if you would like. We would always love to sit down and talk with you one-on-one. But our goal is just to help give you the tools and the support that you need to be able to navigate this chapter of life.
All right. That was a very thorough opening. So kind of along those same lines, can you talk a little bit, give a little general overview of sort of what the options are in Richmond, Virginia today, what you're seeing as people sort of enter this,
Yeah.
This stage of life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think kind of the most well-known thing, the people that usually everybody knows about is the model. There's kind of a couple different models, and one is the Continuing Care Retirement Community, the CCRC. That here in Richmond would be Westminster, Canterbury, Lakewood, Cedarfield, Covenant Woods, Brainerd Mill Woods, and Avery Point. Brainerd Mill Woods and Avery Point are a little bit different than the other four, but the other four are, strictly kind of what's called a life care community. So the idea is you pay a large down payment at the beginning, six-figure payment, and then you move into independent living. They want you to be independent, and independent not just in that moment, but probably for the next at least few years. You live in independent living, you pay a certain amount for wherever it is that you're living, and then as you age down the continuum and you need more care, you're going to continue to pay that same price. You know that you won't be asked to leave at any point because they've made sure that you have enough assets to support yourself there, and everything's on one campus. So I think that most people kind of know about that model. What a lot of people come to us and say is they think there's that or the nursing home. And like those are our two options. And what I really want people to understand is that those aren't the only options. There are other models. There are independent living communities. I think it's always helpful to me, like if you kind of can picture something or an example. So for each thing, I'll try to say a couple so you can be like, oh yeah, that's what she's talking about. So like Tuckahoe Pines or Aspire, Varina, Chesterfield Heights. Those are all where you kind of are going there. You're going to rent your apartment. You're going to get some amount of meals. There's amenities, but nobody who lives there is going to be taking care of you, right? So that's what the independent piece of it is. No, they're not licensed to take care of you. They're actually, if you were to fall down, they wouldn't be allowed to help you up because they're not licensed to place their hands on you. They can come to you and say, what would you like me to do? Would you like me to call your daughter? Would you like me to call an ambulance? They can help you, but they can't physically help you. So that independent living. Then there's kind of assisted living. That's going to be all your meals and housekeeping and laundry, and then care. How you pay for that would be you have a price for your rent for your apartment, and then you also have a cost for your level of care. And there's usually anywhere between maybe 4 and 6 different levels, depending on what you need. You can live in an assisted living and pay 0 level of care, and so you're independent. But typically people are moving to assisted living because they need some care, and the staff there is providing that care. Another thing that people tend to think is assisted living is just a little bit of care, and then at some point towards the end of your life, you're going to need to go to a nursing home, right? We hear that all the time. Well, what about when you have to go to the nursing home? The way things have changed lately is that those assisted livings are legally allowed to provide a very high level of care. You can't have a feeding tube, can't have a ventilator, can't have continuous IV medications and high wounds you cannot have. Other than that, setting those aside, they are legally allowed to provide full care. Some assisted livings are choosing to not do that, but some are choosing to. We can tell you which ones do and don't, but they are allowed to do that. So in the time I've been doing this, I only have moved one person from assisted living to skilled nursing for care because she was much younger, had a brain tumor in her children, and they chose together that she would go on a feeding tube. Typically, folks at that stage of life, when we get there, we think I'm not really interested in some of those supports. So typically, folks are going to be able to live out the rest of their life in their assisted living apartment. Hospice can be brought in. They can get lots of support if it's just an assisted living. Back to the CCRC model, because they offer those different levels of support. If you're in assisted living, and like for some of them, if you are in a wheelchair and you can get to lunch, you're fine. But if somebody needs to push you to lunch, now you need to move to healthcare. So when that is on offer, They're going to move you there when it's not on offer. They're going to bring the care to you. And then there is kind of that skilled nursing, rehab, nursing home. It's all, all different names for it, but kind of that more institutional feeling. You're in a hospital bed. You're getting that really high level of care if you needed the ventilator, feeding tube, something like that. So those are, and then there's kind of little hybrids. There are places that have assisted living and independent living in the same apartment. There are some buildings where they've got an independent living wing and then an assisted living wing, kind of all the different combinations. And then obviously you can stay in your home and have care brought in. You can also move to one of the independent living communities where they don't have care provided and bring in your own care. And I will say, I'll finish this question now, but overall, I feel like for folks who have the resources to be able to do that, we have found those are some of our most happy clients, because you're in a social situation, you're getting this food, you've got your nice big apartment, because typically in assisted living, the apartments are much smaller. And then you have care coming in from a great company that's all they're doing, right? All they're doing is providing care. They're not trying to do a million different things. We have a couple care companies that we work with that are phenomenal. And maybe you have somebody come in and it's not a great fit for you. And you can say, we'd like to meet somebody else. And then they can send somebody else. Whereas if you're in an assisted living and you're not loving the person that's providing care, that's not really an option for you to change. So we see a lot of folks really kind of loving that. One more category that a lot of people don't know about, and we have a ton of here in Richmond, and we found out they don't even have them in Charlottesville, is a residential assisted living care home. Lots of different names. So just like literally a house in a neighborhood. You would never know that, unless you saw they had extra ramps or you see people walking around. There are a lot of them in Richmond. We work really closely with hospice companies to make sure that we're working with the best homes. We have gotten to know these ladies really well who run the homes. They provide phenomenal care. They're immaculately clean. You're getting, a 1-to-3 or 1-to-4 care ratio, where in a larger community you're looking at 1-to-10 or 1-to-12. So at a stage where you're still very active and want to be doing things, that is not a good option. But for somebody who's really just needing really good care and a lot of it, they are phenomenal options. And we really love that we have them here in Richmond.
Again, very thorough answer. I like that. A lot of information to soak in. So, as you said, most people in Richmond know about the CCRCs. They don't know that they're called CCRCs,
Right.
but they know,
Right.
I'm going to Westminster Canterbury, I'm going to Cedarfield. So talk a little bit about some of the positives to those communities, and then also some of the challenges you've seen people have with those.
Absolutely. I think there's lots of positives, just all of the socialization, the amenities that are there, beautiful campuses. A lot of people who do end up choosing to go to a CCRC already have a lot of friends who live there. So that feels good when you're moving in and you already, kind of like when you go to college and, your older brother's friends are there and you're like, oh, this, that makes you feel comfortable to know that folks are there. They have wonderful activities, social life, all of that. And I'm going to move here and I won't have to leave. I'm not worried about running out of money. I know how much I'm going to be paying every month, for the rest of my life. So that feels comforting. I would say some of the challenges and what we really want people to know before they make that commitment, because once you've made that commitment, you pay that 6-figure buy-in. I feel like I always mispronounce this word, but amortize?
Amortize.
Yes, amortize over 4 years. So by the end of the 4 years, if you were to move out, that money is no longer yours. So you're making a commitment that probably you're not going to change your mind about, which is actually, in my mind, a little bit of a drawback. I'm somebody who puts magnets on my car, but not stickers, right? Like I love things that I can be like, oh, I don't really like that anymore. I'll just take that off my car. So you are kind of jumping into something that you can get out of, but it's a much different thing. Whereas all of those other options are just a 30-day notice to leave. You pay a small community fee, 30-day notice to leave. So if your daughter moves to North Carolina and you decide you want to go be close to her, then you just give your 30-day notice and leave, whereas it's going to be different at a CCRC. Another challenge sometimes, and again, I want people to know all the things so that when they if you're living there when it happens, you're not like, wait, what? Nobody told me this. You're like, oh yeah, well, Jen told us this is going to happen and now we know. It's a very different feeling, right? Finding out something that you didn't know versus now it's time to deal with this. The majority of time, resources, marketing, all that is focused on that independent living piece of the community. So sometimes people haven't even seen the assisted living, memory care, healthcare. My huge recommendation to you if you're thinking about moving one is to say, I'd like to tour all of them. Sometimes people are like, wait, I have to move into a studio apartment? You know, we actually want a 2-bedroom, but they're, you know, that's all that's on offer. You're kind of signing a contract where now they are not making choices for you, but they could say, we think you are unsafe in this part of our community. You need to move to this other part of our community, or you need to bring in 24/7 care. And even if you feel like you are fine, you still have to, you've signed a contract with them. So you're making that, you need to listen to what they say. And so for couples, we find sometimes that it can be a challenge, right? Because maybe you've been married for 60 years and you're like, we want to be together and we're living in our independent living apartment, and now one spouse needs more help and they're saying, okay, you need to move here, but you can stay here. So sometimes it's a little more challenging if you have two different need levels to be able to stay together if you're in a CCRC.
Talk about the independent, like you can get on the list, right, for
Yes.
one,
Yes.
and they want you to come in independent, but
Yes.
sometimes when.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Perfect. What we have found is people will say, okay, well, I know that I want to go to Cedarfield later, so I'm going to get on that wait list and we're just going to keep living our lives here. And then one spouse or the other is like, oh, this is, life's feeling a little more challenging, and we think now we're going to make the move. We hear people say all the time, oh, we know you have to walk into those places. You actually don't need to walk into that place. If you live in a wheelchair and you can take care of yourself and you're independent, that's fine. It's not about whether you can walk or not walk. It's about, are you truly independent? Can you care for yourself in every way that means? And will you likely be able to do that for the next few years? We'll go obviously in a financial place. I don't need to explain financial model, but if it makes sense that they need you to be living there for a while, right, where they're not having to care for you in order to make it work, that they can pay for you when you do need to be cared for. So what happens is sometimes if you do wait until you think, okay, well now we probably should move, then you possibly have waited too long. And when you go and say, okay, we're ready, we know we have, on the wait list and now we're ready to move in, they're gonna, work with you financially, have the physical, all these things, and they might come back to you and say, you now have missed that window. And that's actually, we partner with a lot of this, with the CCRCs, because then they say, we are no longer fit for you. Here, Dowda can help you find something else. So, I appreciate that they're not putting the heavy press on anybody, and we would never want to do that either, but just know that if that's the model you're going for, that you need to make sure that you still qualify for that. In my mind, that the challenge is lots of people want to stay home as long as they can or for the rest of their life. You have to move before you know if you actually could stay home, right? And then maybe, so you're kind of having to make a choice for something that might happen in the future instead of saying, okay, we're just going to stay here, and then when if and when we get to the point where we actually do need to move somewhere, then we'll know that it's time to move and that we do need to move. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Made sense to me.
Okay.
Don't want to speak for anybody else.
Yeah.
So dovetailing on that, let's kind of go the opposite side, and I'm going to hit both of these. But you mentioned, when you and I talked on the phone a couple weeks ago, you said, one of our big goals is, if it's right for the client, is to keep them home as long as possible, right? Because people tend to do better. So talk a little bit about that, the options there, what challenges and opportunities there are for people in that.
Yes, great
space.
question. Yes, I don't know what the percentage is, if they've asked people, but a very large percentage of people want to stay in their home. I do. So I just, there's lots of reasons why it's great to stay at home. The good news is, because more and more people want to do that, and there's lots of brilliant entrepreneurial people out there trying to figure out great ways to help you stay at home. There are new things all the time. We had somebody come to a staff meeting a couple weeks ago who got qualified as a foot nurse, which apparently she had to go to South Carolina to get her training because there weren't anywhere closer than that. And her name's Destiny, and she's absolutely lovely. And so she can come to your home and provide whatever care that you need, even if somebody's living with dementia and that might be a little more challenging for them, she's able to help that. She's just this wonderful person who's now able to do this thing that we didn't have anyone in Richmond who could do that before. So that's like one tiny example of tons and tons of different things that people are trying to figure out. How can we help people age well? Not just stay safe, not just, not fall down the stairs, but like really thrive and age well at home. So new things are happening all the time to be able to do that. I would say probably the biggest challenge of doing that people find is it feels a little strange to have someone else in your home all the time. And maybe you need somebody to be there. Like, for example, if you needed someone to help you get to the restroom, but we've already made the meals for the day and they can help you with light housekeeping and lots of things, but there's only so much that they can do, right? So then you know how much you're paying them per hour and they're sitting on your couch on their phone and you're like, oh my gosh. Or just you're somebody who feels like you need to be entertaining somebody who's in your home, and so that feels hard. So just that, like, having another person in your home, I think can be a challenge for people that they don't realize. On the plus side, I think in the old days, there was if you could find somebody privately to come help care for you, they cared for your aunt, years ago or whatever, then it can work out well. But a lot of people have had really negative experiences using agencies. Like I said, we have one in particular agency that I cannot speak highly enough of, and they invest in their caregivers so well, and they provide such excellent care. You can also, we just recently discovered a woman who has kind of made a little clearinghouse just for here in Richmond. She's a retired nurse, and she purchased the list of CNAs in the area. So you pay her a fee. I think at this point it's $90. You tell her what you're needing. She connects you with several CNAs for you to talk to. You can see their resume, see their references, all of that. And then you're kind of off to the races between you and them. And that starts at $25 an hour, whereas typically an agency, they're probably getting closer to $45 an hour. So you're going to be handling that yourself, but you're going to be getting a CNA that you can pick yourself, and then and saving a lot of money in that process. So I think I think there will be more and more things like that, ways for you to directly find somebody that you can kind of pick instead of just whoever it is that the agency's sending you. And back to kind of when we were talking about the different models, another drawback or challenge of bringing care in the home, especially if you are a single person, is just the isolation in that, right? So you're just at home, and you could have a great caregiver, but it's just you and her or him, and you're just kind of sitting there all day, right? And then especially if anybody's starting to live with brain change and needs some more stimulation, all of that can just be a challenge. So that's why we find sometimes that idea of moving into an independent living community where you can roll down the hall and all have dinner together, because also if you're at home and you're having more physical challenges, you might think, I'm not going out to church or to my book club or whatever, so it's too hard. In an independent living community, you could do those things, but then you can also have your personal care come in and manage that yourself. So I always tell people, if you're trying to kind of prepare yourself to stay home and age well, get everything you need on one floor, really one floor, not like, oh, it's just one step to that, like for real, one floor or a ramp to be able to get in. Get some good neighbors. My aunt and all of her friends had a little lady living in their cul-de-sac, and every morning she would put her garage door up, and so they would know she was okay. That was how, they could kind of keep tabs on her. So, have people around you that are good neighbors, and try to stay just as engaged and social as you can.
Great. So let's say somebody has evaluated all those options, and they say, I want to be in the CCRC. That's the model I want. Is that something you guys can still help them with, and talk about how you might go about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we would love to help with whatever is happening. Like I said, we have really great relationships with the CCRCs. We love working with them. They, whenever somebody comes to them that's not a fit for them, they'll send them to us so we can help support them. But we love to be a part of it. Even if you come to us and you're like, yep, my mom and my grandmother and my great-grandmother, they all moved to Cedarfield and that's where I'm going, so I don't really need any help. We would still love to be a part of that, just to, kind of be your eyes and ears for you, make sure that you're knowing all of that's coming. We have, if somebody is living with dementia, we have 3 dementia consultants. We have engagement folks on our team, because sometimes that can be a challenge if that's the space that you're living in a community. And we love to be able to send them in to help support you, to help support the staff. We try to do as much staff training as our dementia consultants can do. So we really want to be a part of that. Also, one thing, no matter where you're moving, we find people are usually nervous to complain about anything, because then they think that there will be repercussions to that for them or their loved ones. Because we have lots of people in lots of communities all over Richmond, we're able to, you can tell us, here's a challenge we're having, we don't want you to tell them it's us. Great. Then we can go to the director, head of nursing, whoever it needs to be, and say, we're finding this is challenging for one of our residents who are here. We'd love to figure out a way to solve this. And now nobody needs to know who that was. We also love the fact that they really want to keep us happy. So we tend to, when we ask for something, it usually happens. And in a perfect world, every family who asks for something to happen, it should happen. But if you're feeling like you're not getting listened to, we want to be there to be able to speak up for you. That feels really important to us. And we just want everybody to just do a better job and all across the line. And then that's what we can do, is say, like, here's this community that we love who's doing a phenomenal job, and we can tell people about that, and then they're rewarded for the really great work that they're doing. So that's why we love partnering with folks.
It was a great tag-on question to that, and you sort of alluded to it a little bit in your response there. But so somebody engages your firm, you go through the whole process, you find a great place for them, they move in, everybody's happy. How do you continue to interact with those families?
Great.
Talk a little bit about
Great
that.
question. So all of this has morphed so much from when it was just me calling you and saying, how's it going? To now we have all these. We find that if we reach out to somebody and say, is everything going great? We just want to make sure, we're going to get a more response. And so we now have, just forever and ever, quarterly automated check-in emails that are just, hey, we just want to see how it's going, just so you remember we're here. If you have any, we want to talk to you when the issue is small, because if you just reach out to us when it's gotten larger, there's maybe less that we can help with. We bring people homemade treats on their birthdays. We have a care team that does that, who visits. We have somebody on our team who makes these beautiful hangings for your door when you move in, so she comes and visits you and does that. If a adult daughter will call and say, we just talked to mom and she's really struggling, could somebody go over and just hang out with her? We have a team to do that. So we tell people, they'll move in and then say, oh, well, now, are you going to go away? And we only go away if you tell us to. So I'm not sure hopefully nobody will do that. But we want to be in it. We go to lots and lots of funerals. Y'all were sharing ahead of time that for your advisor has become a personal friend. I feel like that's not uncommon for us, because this is a really tender, vulnerable place that you're in, and we're asking you to trust us, and so we're walking in each other's lives in that way. And so we really want folks to continue to reach out to us no matter what, and then we try to have lots of events. We have a really fun event coming up on May 6th called Night to Remember. It's a fundraiser for the Alzheimer's Association. But I don't know if anyone's familiar with the event. Night to Shine is an event we started here in Richmond about 15 years ago through the Tim Tebow Foundation for folks living with special needs. And so when I started this business, I was like, oh, I want to do Night to Shine, but for older adults. We have a big, huge band. We have cater. It's amazing. So we try to do, we have dementia date nights, we have support groups. We're just always trying to put things out there where we can interact with folks, whether they're still in home or if they've moved, just so that they know we're here for you. Don't forget, we want you to reach out.
That's great. And then kind of another follow-on question to that, because this involves staying in touch. And so somebody's gone through the process, you've done your work, you think you got them in the right place. How often do you see that not work and they need to move to another place?
I would say maybe 15% of the time, Elena. Do you think? I don't know.
And what typically triggers that?
Yeah.
Or what sort of things trigger that? Yeah.
So I can use an example from today. There is a little tiny residential assisted living down in Chesterfield that only has 3 people at a time. They only take people who are really, really high level need. She's a nurse who's worked in hospice for 35 years. It's this amazingly wonderful place. And we had moved somebody there, and she called me this morning. Last night she sent me pictures, and he's here, and this is great. And then she called this morning and said, could you talk? So we chatted, and he's just very unhappy with his life, but he is taking it out on everyone in this home. And she just said, I don't think this is going to change, and I think this is hard. So we have somebody out now who's working with the wife to kind of deal with that. So just sometimes we do all the things, and we try to do the best that we can of finding the right fit. And then something happens, and we're like, okay, that wasn't the right fit. But I feel like we get better and better and better at it. Some people, we meet with them, and we'll end up, they want to see 12 different communities. Sometimes I'll talk to somebody, and they'll tell me their story, and I'll say, I'll show you as many as you want, but I can tell you what the right fit is. This is where I think you're really going to love. So it's usually, or somebody moves somewhere, and back to those residential assisted livings, they're much more affordable than the larger communities. So maybe somebody's living a lot longer than they had planned, and they're thinking, this is, these are my assets, and they're going down, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to live at this level of care at this larger community paying this amount. And then we would say, okay, well, let's look at some different options. So I feel like we usually get the fit pretty well, but if it's not a fit, we're pretty good at saying we need to just call it quits here and look at something new.
Great. You've alluded to this a little bit and hit on it, but so there's CCRC, right? There's the staying at home, and then there's these ones in the middle. And one of the things you said to me when we talked a few weeks ago is you see more and more people going to these independent livings and then taking care of their own care as needed as it comes in. So talk a little bit about that model and what you see there.
Did I do something wrong? I hear. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Yes, great question. So, and kind of looping also back to the CCRC question, this is what we see happen quite often, is that somebody moves to the CCRC in the independent living, everything's going great, then they're told, we think you're needing some more care, so we think you need to move to assisted living. They go see the assisted living apartment, really think about what that's going to be like to go to a whole different building, eat with different people, have different neighbors, all of that, and they're like, I don't really want to do that. So then they bring care in to their independent living cottage, villa, apartment, whatever, at the CCRC, and end up just having the care there, which then they could have just either stayed at home, right, or moved to an independent living apartment and brought that care in and maybe saved that large buy-in that they did at the beginning. And again, if you're wanting to move to the CCRC because you want all of that stuff, then absolutely do it, because you're not going to get all of those things at any of these other communities. But if you're doing it so that you can be around people and then get good care and you're just going to end up staying there, then that's why I like people to look at that. So that independent living, like I said, they're all a little bit different. Some, I mentioned Tuckahoe Pines there. It's like all the food that you could eat every second of the day. Some of them, it's $400 that you can spend on your food. Some, like Verena, does just breakfast and lunch. So food is all different at all of them. But the idea is that you're able to, in just going out your door, see other people, be involved with other people, not have to worry about, clearing the driveway and all of the things that you might have to worry about at home. And then you're able to manage that care that is coming in. Also, in community, people really look out for each other a lot. And so there might be something that you might need, but maybe you make a friend that can help you with that. And maybe somebody's dealing with more of a cognitive challenge and somebody else is dealing more with a physical challenge. And together, people are looking out for each other. So we see that happen a lot too in independent living, where if you were living in your home, you would need to have people coming in to do certain things. Whereas if you're living in an independent living community, you're able to do a lot more things for yourself. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
So we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of good information. We know where the industry sort of came from, which you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thought of the nursing home, right? I'm going to the old folks' home to die, to where we are now with the CCRC's independent living. What do you see coming down the road? Anything new and interesting that may be pertinent to us here?
That's a great question. It's actually something that I'm trying to get a little time in my schedule to be able to look into more. Is the CCRCs are also seeing changes that are coming, and so there's a lot more ways that they're allowing you to kind of be a part of their community but staying at home. So it started with Lakewood at Home. I feel like it's kind of the first one that did it. Now that's called Age Smart, I think. So I think those are going to be, kind of you can stay at home, pay this amount, knowing that kind of is going to save a spot for you if in the future you want to move to assisted living at Westminster Canterbury, but you want to stay in your home. All of those things are changing. Like I said, I feel like I need to, every 6 months, need to check in with them and say, okay, what does this look like now? Cedarfield had Cedarfield at Home, I think. And it's kind of like you paid this amount of money, you're on the list, and you can use Cedarfield kind of as a country club, right? So you're not living there, but you can go and do all the things there. So I think this trend of people really wanting to either stay at home or stay in independent living, they're trying to respond to that. I was saying when Wes and I were talking, I feel like it's, as someone whose fourth child just finished college last year, even that idea of like how, when I was in high school, it was like, yeah, everybody went to college and did this, and it's just getting so astronomically expensive, and there's so many kind of other alternatives that are happening. So I think there'll always be kind of these universities that are going to do great and have lots of folks coming in, and then there's going to be lots of other options and ways that they're maybe doing some online classes or so I think things are going to continue to shift to allow people to do kind of exactly what they want to do, instead of just, you have to pay this thing, move in independently and move down the thing. I think they're going to continue to figure out ways to help people get what it is that they want.
One last question, and then we can open up to individual questions. Or one last comment, maybe, that you had talked about this new thing that was coming online in Richmond, which was like basically a purpose-built home.
Oh, right. Yes.
With a certain amount of rooms and medical care there and everything. So talk a little bit about that, because that sounded like one of the things that may be coming in the future, especially for people who have means to be able to afford that.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes. So we had a local GI physician reach out to us a year and a half ago, with this idea. He wanted to kind of have a purpose project to be a part of. He said you can only do so many colonoscopies in your life before you just need something else. And so we have been working with him. He's building it's a community, kind of like the residential assisted living, but he's building it for this purpose. And Elena is very wise in all things of the community, so she was a part of that. Another person on our team has been a part of it, truly like down to the architectural decisions, design decisions, all of that. So it looks like a just big, beautiful, gorgeous home. It's meant to feel like home, but the idea, and it's just for folks living with dementia. 16 private apartments, each with their own private bathroom, kind of a boutique feel to it, lovely, gorgeous community. So the one physician, he has another partner who's also a physician, and so the group is called Physician Care Homes. This one home that will be opening this summer is Magnolia House, and actually we're letting go of someone on our team to go run that home, because she's amazing and going to do a great job. So I think also that is another trend that people are going to see. There's somebody else who's in this industry, runs a care company, and he moved to a new house and used his old house that he's turning that into a residential home, kind of more high end. So the ratio at that 16 bed community will be, I think he's looking at 1 to 4 for caregivers, at least when we first talked to him. I don't know if he's still doing this, but everybody who works there is going to have kind of part ownership in this home. So it's not just, you're just coming in and making your whatever per hour and heading out. So I do think there was somebody else just opened a home in October in the Shore Pump area because she was so frustrated with what she could not find for her dad. She was a travel agent and just said, I'm going to do something. And so she went and got her administrator's license, her CNA, and her med tech, and has opened it up. And that has, I think she's got 12 rooms there. And she's just providing phenomenal care, again, at that really high level ratio. So again, the idea of, stay at home or in an independent living and bringing care in, maybe while you need it, just scheduled in the morning and scheduled in the evening, knowing that if and when you got to a point where you're needing lots and lots of care, that then there could be this smaller care home that could provide that care for you 24/7. In my mind, that kind of feels like if you have the resources to do that, that feels like an ideal situation, knowing that those are there. Very, very different than a nursing home. And I would recommend, seeing before you make any decisions, kind of at least seeing an example of each of those to think, so that way if, I remember touring somebody one time and we went and saw a couple communities and she's like, well, I need to see a community where you don't walk into the kitchen. Like when I walk into the apartment, I can't walk into the kitchen. I was like, and she had a pretty serious progressive illness. And so she knew she was going to need some care. And I said, well, there aren't any. And she was like, well, then I'm not moving. I was like, well, okay, well, now we know that, right? So now we know we just need to do all in the care. So you don't know what's out there until you actually see it. And it's super helpful to go see those communities. And we'd always be happy to take anyone to go see them, just so you can kind of see what the options are and get an idea.
All right, I lied. I have one more question.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of great information, and appreciate you being here. In your opinion or your experience, where's sort of the sweet spot or the most successful spot for someone to start exploring this? Like, a lot of people, we know client-wise, wait until the last minute, and then it's sort of an emergency thing. But what do you think is the right sort of time slot to begin thinking about these things?
Today would be a great time. Especially at the CCRCs, there's 7 to 10 year wait lists for some things. Like there's no reason, in my mind, if you have availability to do it, there's no reason to wait. Especially because health events can happen that can change things just like that. And if you've already looked at things and you've already had these conversations, if you have children, it will make them happy. If you have grandchildren, it will make them happy. Planning ahead. Obviously, all of you are clients here, so you're planning ahead with your money and know that people who know great things are taking care of that. We would love to do that same thing for you. As far, people say, we don't want to waste your time. We don't, that is literally why we're here, is to do this. So it is not a waste of time, and we would love to talk with you. We have the number. We have like an intake number. If you call that, somebody can talk to you, and they'll set up a time to meet with one of our advisors, and we can come to your home. We can meet you out somewhere. We don't have an office. We talk about it every once in a while, and we're like, I just don't want to spend the money on something that we're never going to use, because we're always out and about with people. So don't ever think that that's a waste of our time. We would love to do that as soon as possible. And there's lots of different wait lists and things that you can do that are completely risk-free. There's a place that we really like where they'll literally take your $1,000 check, stick it in their lockbox. They don't even cash it. And anytime you want, you can just call and say, we're not interested anymore. So lots of things you can do. We don't give out any of our clients information. So you're never going to, if we go on a tour, unless you give them your phone number, they don't have it, and they're never going to call you and follow up. Don't give your information to a place for mom, because they will send it out to everybody. But we don't. And so there shouldn't ever be a reason, if you have a conversation with us, that you look back and think, gosh, I really wish I hadn't done that. Like, we work really hard to make sure there's never a reason that you would regret that.
Great. All right, well, thank you for your time. I think we have probably 5 to 8 minutes left, and if we've got, well, first of all, thank you.
Absolutely.
Very good, yeah. Love, great information. If anybody's got individual questions that you want to ask in the group, there we go. And then after, I'm sure Jen would hang around, and certainly we've got information to how to get a hold of her team as well. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, this was about senior living. Are there any thresholds as far as senior living? Do you have to have a certain age? And then the other thing, of course, probably for all of us, is the affordability where we're at. Just a general concept, so you know whether there's something there.
Sure. As far as age, it's going to be a little different, or qualifications depending on what you're talking about. As far as, independent living or assisted living, different communities have different qualifications. So if you have if there's a specific place you'd love to know about, I'd be more than happy to answer that for that. Sometimes if it's a couple moving in, one person needs to be above this age, or it's a little different for all of them, but we could definitely let you know. And then as far as affordability, yes, all of it is quite expensive. It feels a little bit like monopoly money sometimes. There is a lot of people kind of feel like, oh, you could move somewhere and then, if you run out of money, you can go onto Medicaid. That's not the case in any communities here in Richmond. The things that can help you, people will call and say, oh, I can go to any community because I have really good insurance. Insurance isn't what's going to cover. It's private pay for all of these things that we've talked about. The 2 things that can help you pay for it would be long-term care insurance and/or there's something called the VA aid and attendance benefit for somebody who was active duty during a wartime. You don't have to be in the war, but on active duty. But you also have to qualify for it financially. So basically, you need to need the help in order to get that money. But aside from that, it's all.
And I'll add on to that. Like we've already partnered with Dowda with several clients, and they're really good. Once a decision has been made, or an array of decisions have been made, we can get the financial information, look at the costs, run the analysis for you, and see if it's something that makes sense for you from a financial standpoint. So part of the financial planning process, we're happy to do that and have done that a lot. Yes, Sarah.
Can you repeat the questions for the online viewers? And Wes has texted you a question too.
Okay, all right. So that question, just for the online viewers, was: are there age limitations at some of these places? In other words, do you have to be a certain age to get in? And then it was a question about what about the affordability of them? So that was what I addressed second there. So you had a question here, sir.
Some of the CCRCs are actually for-profit companies. And I've read newspaper articles where some of these companies go out of business and people are put on the street. No refund. How do we protect ourselves from that?
So the question was, if you do make an investment in a community and then that community goes out of business, what can be the repercussions? Do you have experience with that having happened, and what do you know about that?
So as long as I've been doing that hasn't happened to any communities here in Richmond. And I would say that would be a really in-depth conversation we would want to have with that particular community. I don't know that there's like a general answer I could give for all of them, but I think and we have done that with clients, kind of, help us, we're going to sit there with that marketer and say, help us understand, what if this happens? So it's a great question. Another reason we would love to be with you on the tour, to be able, because it's a whole other language, right? It's almost like all these abbreviations and words, and sometimes it's just like if I were to sit in with a financial planner and be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. You need to just tell me. So we love to be there to help that. That's a really great question.
Boy, got more questions. All right, let's go here first. Karen, go ahead.
We had a friend, a couple that was a friend, and they were in one of the communities. I'm not good with initials. But anyway, they lived there. They had their apartment, and they were, like I said, a couple. She died, and he got kicked out because he couldn't afford it by himself. Is that you got to look out for that, or?
So the question was, a couple moves into a facility, I guess probably with both their social securities and maybe pensions, they could afford it. One of the couple dies, half of the couple dies, and that income goes away, and you might be forced out. And talk a little bit about that.
It's a great question. Another thing that we see happen is somebody moves in and maybe, this has happened with several people we know of, moved into memory support neighborhood, and then the challenges are too great for them, and then they say, you have to leave. So you've already paid all that money to get in to have your spouse there, and now you're moving, and so you want to be near them. So again, great question of like when you're sitting in that space talking to that particular community to say, what, under what circumstances would I ever have to leave? Help me know that. Really great question.
So you do provide information in advance for that kind of a situation?
Yeah, so we would sit with you and have the community itself answer that question for you to make sure, because we want to hear them say it to make sure that we know that we're all kind of on the same page. So yes.
I think that question, that's a good advertisement for why you want to have somebody who's going to be an advocate for you, who knows the questions to ask, when you're going to these different facilities. So
because in their market, like a marketer's job is to get you to come to their community. That's their job. It's okay. That's great. They're not trying to trick anybody, but that is their job. Our job is to help you do what's best for you. And that's not what a marketer's job is. So they're going to tell you about their community, and that's great. And also, we want to do what we do with them and partner.
I'll go to, there's a couple more questions out here. We got probably time for like 3 more. So I'm going to read the one from Zoom. You mentioned Avery Point. This question is, there are fees to get into Avery Point, but they heard that if you leave at some point, you can get some or all of your money back. Can you talk a little bit about those options?
Sure.
The CCRs too, can you do the same thing there before the 4 years?
Yes, they'll kind of give you a whole bunch of different options, and each one it would be a little bit different. So kind of in the interest of time, I'll just say Avery Point, as the newest one, seeing all of these trends that are happening, has a lot more options of percentage you can get back after a certain amount of time. They've got all kinds of different options, and yes, so I
So I
don't
think
want to go into all of that.
the answer to that question is, when you go to these places, if they're of interest to you, get all those different options, consult with us. We can walk through the financial repercussions of each one, which one makes the most sense for you based on your goals for your money, and then you can decide if it's a good decision for you. And we've actually done that with clients, especially at Avery Point. I've got, I think, 4 clients living there now, and by the way, they're all very happy, but we did that with each of those clients, so something that Heartwood can provide for you. Okay, who else had a question? Somebody?
Just a
Yes, sir.
clarification, you mentioned it before, but you're reimbursed by the retirement villages, so we don't have to pay any fees or anything?
So the question is, Jen provides all these services, her company does. How are they compensated? How are they able to make this work? Yeah.
Right, yeah, so the communities themselves pay the fee, and when Wes and I were talking about this, typically a CCRC doesn't need our marketing help, right? Everybody kind of, so they don't pay referral fees typically, but also we don't get paid a referral fee if somebody stays home, and we're more than happy to do that. So far, I have one client who's a bankruptcy lawyer who's really worried about me. I keep telling him we're good, but so far we move enough people into the communities that do pay us that we're able to take good care of our staff. So, yep. And then the piece of, well, are you going to only move me somewhere that they're going to pay you? That's the part where the trust comes in. You just have to trust us that we really do want what's best for you, and we're going to do that. So, is there a second part to that question?
I don't think so. Okay, one last question. Yes, ma'am.
Just to piggyback on this gentleman's comment about profit, nonprofit places, it looks like the CCRs that you've mentioned are both. I mean, Westminster is listed as being both, so however that works. How do you think that model shapes the community for the residents?
So the question was, some of these communities are for-profit, some are non-profit. Westminster Canterbury apparently is listed as both. It must have a nonprofit piece. How does that shape the care? How have you seen it shape the care that these different places give?
Yeah, I would say I'm a big fan of the nonprofits, just in general, not just the CCRCs, but also the smaller communities. Also, kind of right along there is the locally owned, right? So when you've got something that's a big company that's out west somewhere and the investors are the ones who are making the decisions and they have not met your mom, is a very different thing than some of these communities where they own one community, they live here in town, they're in the building all the time. If they decide we're not going to have good food anymore, they're going to hear about it when they walk in the building, even if that saves money. So for sure, I think nonprofits, locally owned, can be a great, but it really is, and I don't think I've said this, usually I say it a million times, but like what we're trying to help people is find the right fit for them. So it really also depends on just the personality of the client. And I know for you all, my dad is a financial planner, and so he always says that. He's like, people have a very personal relationship with their money, and you have to understand that in order to understand how to advise them. Same thing for us. We want to understand you and your goals and risks you're willing to take, risks you're not, all of that to be able to say this is the right fit. So having said that, I personally am a fan of nonprofits, but it doesn't mean that for everybody that's going to be the right fit.
Great. All right. Well, again, Jen, thank you for your time. Thanks for all the
Absolutely.
information. Thank everybody for
Thank
coming
you all.
today. And again, if you have questions offline, Jen will stick around. And again, have a nice, wet winter afternoon.
Thank you all.